Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Silicon Insider podcast. Uh, I'm here with Scott Budman, as you all know. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, Mike. Hello.
Was it cooler in the city than down here?
Yes, San Francisco is cool on days like this. Absolutely.
So let's begin. I mean, we'll do this quickly, but there's certain things that have happened this week that maybe prove to be momentous. The first one is the U.S. government, Donald Trump in particular, are planning on taking a 10% equity stake in Intel. Now, we don't talk about Intel much, but all of a sudden, between layoffs and their new CEO, Lipo Buntan, uh, and now this. I mean, when Tan was announced as CEO, Donald Trump went on, I think it was X, and very violently said he needs to be fired or resign because there's some questions about his connection with China. And all of a sudden, Tan goes back to Washington. He meets with the president, basically swore allegiance to the United States, and walks away. And next thing you know, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says, we've already given Intel $2 billion out of what, the 7.8 they promised, the government promised. Why are we taking that as a freebie? Let's turn that into equity. So now we have this story that it's going to happen. Now, as I read all this, three things concern me. One of them is it's not unprecedented for uh, the federal government to buy a stake in a company, at least temporarily. They did it during the automobile crisis. Um, but it's still rare. Secondly, there's 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 one fast rule, hard and fast rule about chip companies, is that if they ever get bought by a non-chip company, they immediately lose ground and eventually fail. And we've seen that for the last 50 years because it the secret sauce, but it's also the culture of chip companies. They think they're getting an electronics company, but they're actually getting a chemical processing company. And they don't, and these big companies don't know how to do it. So that's a concern. Though Lutnick seems to be claiming that the government's not buying any voting shares on the equity, and they're going to keep it low. They're going to keep it a small fraction. Well, the next day, SoftBank announces they're going to buy several $billion worth of equity in the company. So Intel all of a sudden is looking a little bit better. And then what finally struck me was President Biden, his greatest legacy may turn out to be the CHIP Act. If all this goes through and the United States brings home all of these chip companies and revitalizes Intel, and it's already paying for that new fab out in the Midwest, and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is also building a fab. Uh, this may be maybe the smartest move any president's taken in regards to high tech. It ever, if it all comes true and the United States suddenly becomes the place for semiconductor manufacturing and fab again and leads the world into the next, generations. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's kind of a Valhalla. I don't know that it will be the place. But what makes Intel attractive is that Intel is the company that can say, A, we're American, and B, we make chips in America. And
Yes.
given the climate with China and given the climate with AI and what President Trump wants to do and bring some manufacturing back here, it seems like that becomes a target. And he may have been baiting Lit Bhutan when he talked about how, oh, he's beholden to China and all that stuff. What he was really trying to do was get him on board. It worked. And now not only does SoftBank make what could be a saving, Hail Mary pass for Intel, but now the government's there. And so Intel is a much safer company, not to mention all of a sudden a very patriotic play.
Yeah, and there's another fact. Well, I'm getting interviewed by NPR tomorrow, and then I got to write a Washington Post editorial, my first one, about all this. And the more I thought about it, the more I concluded that this is a multi-stage strategy that you got TSMC over here, but they're still the world's leading supplier of chips, and most of them, and China's looking more and more aggressive towards Taiwan. So you ask yourself, what US companies design chips but also fabricate them? And you get a very short list, and Intel's on top. So even as much as they've fallen behind, they're still the guys in the US that make the most chips. So this strategy might be a long-term defense against a Chinese invasion of Taiwan if it happens.
I mean, that's putting a lot on Intel's shoulders right now, but I think there is something to that because in Trump's America First idea, it's both let's keep things here if we can. But
Yeah.
also, as we saw with the NVIDIA and AMD deals, it's okay, you can sell to China if we get a piece of the action. So he's trying to bring either money and or business to America. And there are different ways of doing that. I think Intel is one of those chess pieces.
You know, there have been calls over the last couple of years as Intel has just not been able to keep up that the company should be broken in two, a design shop uh, and a fab. And never the twain shall meet. They would have to compete with everybody else for their own fab or create two separate companies. You think that's viable?
Yeah, actually, I was talking to Ben Beharon, the CEO of Creative Strategies,
Yeah.
about this very story when I was putting it together earlier this week. And he was saying, that the spinoff of this might be Foundry, and we might see that happen. And so it would sort of be I don't know if a split or a spinoff, but we've seen that with the chip world before. And it's interesting because he had said that that could be something we see down the line because of the seeds being planted with this deal.
Yeah, I think at this point, when they were ruling the world, the two parts worked in harmony, but I suspect they're cannibalizing each other's resources right now. And to split the foundry part off from the design part might be a really smart move because they could each get their own funding and investments and that sort of thing. Okay, next up, NVIDIA. Uh, NVIDIA, we just got word on this that China now says it doesn't want to buy NVIDIA chips. Even the special low end that are being lower power ones that are being created for China to sell there. Now the customers are being in China are being told, no, I don't know if this is because it's a move because of tariffs or it's a move to protect Huawei or whatever, but it seems ill-advised. Maybe China's holding out for a chance to get the real good stuff rather than the cut rate chip, cut rate AI chip. What do you think?
I think China is going to do fine, and I think NVIDIA is going to do fine, and I think the money will flow back and forth.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think there's anything to worry about there. I mean, look at the business NVIDIA has done both here and internationally in places
Oh
like
yeah.
China. I mean, just amazing amounts of chips flowing from them to all over the place, and they'll still have a relationship with China. I don't think there's anything to worry about.
Well, it didn't have much effect on the stock,
Exactly.
but apparently NVIDIA has also notified some of its suppliers to hold off
I
till
mean, we'll see.
they
I
figure this
think,
out.
yeah, I these are rumors, and as so much is when it comes to doing business with China, we really don't know. I wouldn't comment on anything yet until we see it concretely, especially given that, again, the Trump administration is in there saying sell away as long as
Yeah.
we get our
We'll
15%.
only get our 15%. Yeah. Uh, kind of like uh, a Hollywood agent. Yeah, do whatever you want, but we get our 15%.
Yeah.
Uh, um, what would it be better? What would be better? NVIDIA selling low-end chips to China in volume, or sticking to its knitting and keep driving the high-end AI chips forward as fast as they can to stay ahead of the competition?
Well, remember, we've gotten to this point without them having to choose one path or another. They've done a
Right.
lot with their chips, and they've been very
Right.
flexible with the design of it all. The companies like, I don't know, Altera and Xilinx don't get enough credit, I think. Cadence, the designing of these chips to be so much more than what they were 30, 40 years ago. And NVIDIA has really taken advantage of that. I mean, you think about gaming, research into medical, things, cancer research, and of course, AI. NVIDIA has been at the forefront because they've been very flexible. So the one thing I don't think we'll see is them going on just one path.
Now, this week, NVIDIA, we're not quite sure why, but it has not had a good week. And do you think it's expectations of a lower numbers on when they do their call on will they announce their numbers financials on Monday, right? Do you think the market's already incorporating the potential down numbers, or you think it's a China thing? What do you think it is?
I mean, as far as how this week has gone, if you're talking about high end stocks, they kind of go in tandem. And it's interesting because if Nvidia loses $4 or $5, look at Circle, look at CoreWeave, even look at Apple, look at Microsoft, look at
Yeah,
Oracle, look at Broadcom. These stocks that have risen so far, so fast, at some point, it just makes sense for a $4.4 trillion company to see investors take some profits off the table. I mean, my goodness. And we've just seen this huge AI slash Bitcoin, I'll call it a bubble, rise and rise to
yeah.
these extreme valuations. And to let off a little steam is almost like when you find out there's like a 2.5 or 2.7 earthquake, everyone's like, ah, cool. Nothing bad happened. And maybe we, let
Took a
off a
little
little
pressure
steam.
off. Yeah.
Exactly. And I just think these valuations are so nosebleed high right now that, once again, there will be, by the time you listen to this, there may have been a lot of nervousness and nail biting leading up to NVIDIA's earnings, as there always are. But look at what these guys have done over the last 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It's been
Sure.
incredible. And so to say, gosh, this week they lost, I don't know, 3 or 4% of their value, I don't think that's anything to worry about.
Well, we talked last week about, you know, uh, people beginning to ask, is the bloom off the rose? This can't go on forever. They're becoming a little more realistic about the potential for AI and what it exactly does, that it's not the miracle worker that we thought it was. If, is that the end of the bubble? I mean, is that near the near future?
It could be, you never know. They made headlines when Meta so much as said, hey, we're going to slow our hiring in the AI department. And again, this comes after that department was hiring by giving nine-figure bonuses to
Yeah.
people. At some point, slowing that down doesn't mean we've failed in this endeavor of AI. But yeah, I've always been a bit of a skeptic because of these crazy valuations married to startups and most companies that haven't yet shown that this is a profitable technology, but
Right.
is rather a technology that sucks up extreme amounts of money, not to mention energy. And so, the healthiest thing that could happen is that sooner rather than later, we find out that AI is good at some things and can help some areas of business be more productive. But goodness, how high is this going to get before we realize, oh, we passed the actual valuation of AI many trillions of dollars ago, and we have to go back there? That's where you get these shocks. And so at some point, we just have to figure out what AI's place is in business, how much money it can and cannot make. And until then, we're all just kind of guessing, aren't
I On the BBC last night, there was a guy, a stock trader, and they have implemented AI in their trading process, decision making, and it turned out that it increased productivity by 10%, not 100%, but by 10%. And he said it's because we can reach out faster and gather information quicker. And he was asked, well, are you going to turn everything over? You're going to fire all your traders and just use AI? And his emphatic answer was no, because there's so much in there that's based upon understanding human behavior and how people buy and sell stock and all that, that AI can never replace that. And I
I
thought
agree.
I thought
And The
that
Wolf of Wall Street would be a very boring movie if instead of
yes.
Leonardo DiCaprio, you had
Yeah.
LLMs.
And I think reality is starting to reassert itself in a lot of these industries. And it was interesting about Zuckerberg because it's almost like he had planned that. He wanted to skim off the top 20 guys in the valley in AI. And then once he got them, no more. So he got what he wanted, cost him a lot, but he's got a lot. Okay, tomorrow in Jackson Hole, Jerome Powell makes probably his last public speech predicting what's coming ahead. And he's apparently about to lose one of his loyalists on the Federal Reserve because she did the same thing Adam Schiff is being accused of listing two houses as primary residences. Uh, and he's also experiencing a mutiny, apparent mutiny by two uh, people that want his throne on the Federal Reserve. It's like he can't hold out too much longer. Uh, what do you think he's going to say? I mean, it's his last chance to light into President Trump and get even for all the stuff Trump's been saying about him and condescending to him and all of that, and calling him incompetent. What do you think he's going to do? What number do you think he's going to announce? Is it a given he's going to do a interest rate cut? I mean, is it inevitable despite his protestations? And what do you think he's going to say about the separation of the Fed and the executive branch?
Well, look, by the time anyone hears this, it'll be over and done. I don't think it's a sure thing that he will have lowered interest rates because he's a very principled person. And because he's a principled person, I think it is a pretty good sure thing that he's not going to stoop to the president's level. Remember, this job has always been separate and independent.
Yeah.
And that's something that not just Jerome Powell, but those who came before him have stuck to, no matter what the president says. And so we know nothing about Jerome Powell except that he is independent and has been very consistent. Why would that stop now? I don't know.
Yeah, but he's also a human being. You can only take the slings and arrows and personal assassinations so long, and this is his last chance to say something.
I mean, look, I don't think he will, but maybe I'll be proven wrong. I just don't think he stoops to that level. We've not seen that before. And why would he tarnish an already really strong legacy? I mean, what he did during the last couple of years when we had inflationary times to bring America's economy back to strength without coming near a recession, without job losses, is something they're going to teach in business school. And why would he tarnish that reputation because of some tweets that called him, late? I just don't see it being a dramatic thing with him.
So, what percentage? How many points?
Oh, I
25?
think he starts, I think he's sort of signposted that he's going to start with a small cut when he does cut. I don't know that when he will. But so I think 25 basis points is to start. And remember, he has said, and this makes sense, this is what a lot of business reporters like me have noticed, really strong economy, job growth, wage growth, all good things. But also some tariffs that, when they finally do kick in, have traditionally been inflationary. And inflation is what you do, lowering interest rates is what you do when you're not fighting inflation. And so the concern that these tariffs will be inflationary has kept Jerome Powell from cutting. And he's been very forthright about that. And that makes sense. But
Yeah.
so far, we've seen economic growth despite what tariffs we've seen. And that's pretty impressive. So good on you, consumer, for continuing to shop.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I've only got one other thing, and this was reported in Reuters. And uh, and Senator Josh Hawley is called this document reprehensible and outrageous. Apparently, an internal document obtained by Reuters, reportedly titled Gen AI Content Risk Standards. Meta, the leaked document, supposedly internal document, supposedly shows that the company Giant's artificial intelligence was permitted to have, quote, sensual, unquote, and romantic chats with children. Uh, you know, every time you think you can trust Meta, Facebook, they always seem to have a scheme going that just hasn't been uncovered. And this, why would they do this given all of the bad publicity they've had over the last couple of years about damaging children and teenage girls and everything else, that they would do this if this is truly the case?
I would answer it in two ways. One, you said every time you think you can trust Meta. Wrong. You can never trust
Never
Meta.
trust
Don't ever
Meta.
say that again. Two, why do we think AI is going to be any different? Honestly, why
Yeah,
are we always surprised when AI does something that a predator would do? And I don't mean to say that these large language models are built to be predators, but come on, they're scraping every part of the internet. They
yeah,
are there to please the user. They're not human, so they don't know that they're dealing with a child. I'm sorry, they're not sentient yet. So they're trying to please the people, whatever, that they're dealing with. They're not good at it. It's not always appropriate. I don't know why we expect it to be and why we think that a scenario with a child online with either A, a stranger, or B, a strange AI bot, that
yeah.
one is any better than the other. I just don't know why we think that. We're deluding ourselves, and we're deluding ourselves in the same way that people would say, just when you think you can trust Meta. We have
Yeah,
to stop.
but the difference is with a human predator, you stop them by putting them in prison.
Correct.
With AI, you can write a few lines of code and at least stop a lot of it just by saying, don't talk about that stuff.
I guess, but I don't know that even that's true. Look, I don't know about coding. I'm not a coder. All I know is that whenever a bot comes online, that bot will lean into the worst case scenario. And we've seen it over and over again. And I don't know why we're surprised by it anymore.
Well, it's yet another argument to don't let your children on these sites, even Facebook, which is, grandma's scrapbook site. You still don't let your children get on it.
I
And
agree.
and it comes down to the parents. And unfortunately, a lot of parents think it's important that their kids be on Facebook and keep up with their friends and the zeitgeist and all that. But here's
Well,
another.
look, there's something to be said for keeping up with your friends. I have no problem with young people keeping up with their friends. That's not dangerous. But strangers online or AI that still can't tell what's right or what's wrong, that's dangerous. And come on, there is a way to separate the two. There is a way to have phones be safer. There is a way to have the internet be safer without eliminating it and saying kids can't do it.
And do you think Facebook really wants to make the internet, make the web safer? Have we seen any evidence over the last 20 years
I was going to say, no, we haven't. Come on.
that all they want is to scrape your data and monetize it and whatever it takes? Okay,
Yes, full stop.
full stop. All right. That's it for that's it for tonight, folks. You can see Scott on NBC Bay Area, Facebook, and X. And you can catch me one last show now on the BBC, the BBC World Radio. Take care, and we'll see you in a week. Bye bye.